The most unsettling questions in theology are often not those that concern heaven, but those that emerge from beneath the surface of the earth, or in this case, beneath the still waters of a lake. What does it mean for a church, once consecrated by prayer and sacrament, to sink into silence? Does holiness persist when memory fades, when liturgy ceases, and when the sacred space itself is submerged beneath the slow indifference of nature? The submerged church of Lake Iznik, ancient Nicaea, forces us to confront a deeper theological tension, whether the sacred is bound to place, or whether it transcends even the ruins of its own history. The discovery of the submerged basilica in 2014, visible from aerial photography beneath the shallow waters of Lake Iznik, immediately captured the attention of historians and theologians alike. Modern archaeological analysis suggests that this structure dates back to the late 4th or early 5th century, possibly erected in honor of a martyr, perhaps even connected to Saint Neophytos, who was believed to have suffered during the persecutions under Diocletian. Yet the physical facts, while compelling, are only the outer layer of a far more complex reality. The church did not simply vanish through neglect. It was likely destroyed by an earthquake in 740 AD, a moment when the earth itself disrupted what had once been a carefully ordered sacred space. Over time, the waters advanced, covering what remained. Stone yielded to sediment, memory to obscurity. It is tempting to interpret this event as a mere accident of geology, but theology rarely allows us such simplicity. The early Christian world, particularly in a city like Nicaea, renowned for hosting the First Council of Nicaea, understood space as charged with meaning. Nicaea was not an ordinary city. It was a place where doctrine had been defined, where the nature of Christ had been fiercely debated, and where orthodoxy had taken form against the pressures of heresy. To build a church in such a place was to inscribe faith into geography itself. The basilica beneath the lake was therefore not just a building. It was a declaration that God had acted in history, and that this action could be localized, remembered, and ritually re-entered. Yet the submergence of this church introduces a paradox. If sacred space is truly sacred, how can it be lost? If it is not truly lost, then what does its disappearance signify? These questions touch upon a deeper distinction within Christian theology: the difference between the visible and the invisible church. The visible church consists of institutions, buildings, liturgies, everything that can be seen and measured. The invisible church, by contrast, is the communion of believers across time, united not by architecture, but by participation in divine life. The submerged basilica of Nicaea exposes the fragility of the visible church, while simultaneously pointing toward the endurance of the invisible one. This distinction, however, does not resolve the tension. It intensifies it. Human beings are not purely spiritual creatures. We require forms, symbols, and places. The incarnation itself, the central mystery of Christianity, affirms that the divine does not remain abstract, but takes on flesh, enters space, and becomes historically situated. Therefore, when a church sinks beneath a lake, something more than stone is lost. A point of encounter between heaven and earth is obscured. The question then becomes not whether God remains present, but how human beings continue to perceive that presence when its traditional markers have disappeared. In this sense, the submerged church becomes a mirror of the human soul. There are moments in individual and collective life when what was once vibrant and visible recedes into silence. Faith itself can feel submerged, no longer articulated in clear doctrine or expressed in communal worship, but buried beneath the pressures of modern existence, skepticism, and distraction. The ruins beneath Lake Iznik are not merely historical artifacts. They are symbols of a recurring spiritual condition. Just as sediment accumulates over stone, so too do habits, doubts, and cultural shifts accumulate over the foundations of belief. Yet the story does not end with submergence. What is striking about the rediscovery of the basilica is not only that it exists, but that it remained structurally recognizable after centuries underwater. Columns, walls, and the outline of the apse are still discernible. This persistence suggests that what is built upon a solid foundation, both literally and metaphorically, does not simply vanish. It may be hidden, but it is not annihilated. Here, the teaching of Christ about building on rock rather than sand acquires an unexpected resonance. The Basilica of Nicaea, though physically submerged, testifies to a deeper durability. This raises an uncomfortable implication. If the sacred can endure beneath the surface, then its absence from view cannot be blamed solely on external forces. There is also a question of perception. The church did not cease to exist, it ceased to be seen. In theological terms, this invites reflection on the concept of revelation. God is not absent, but human beings often lack the vision to recognize His presence. The waters of Lake Iznik become, in this sense, an analogy for the conditions that obscure spiritual reality, conditions that are as much internal as external. At this point, the historical narrative intersects with psychological struggle. The early Christians who built the basilica lived in a world where faith required public expression, often at great cost. Martyrdom was not an abstract ideal, but a lived possibility. The construction of a church was therefore an act of defiance against forces that sought to erase Christian identity. By contrast, modern believers inhabit a world where faith is rarely persecuted in the same way, but is often diluted, privatized, or marginalized. The challenge is no longer survival under oppression, but coherence amid fragmentation. The submerged church thus confronts modernity with an implicit question: what has been allowed to sink in our own time? Not through earthquakes or rising waters, but through indifference, complacency, or the gradual erosion of meaning. It is easier to attribute loss to dramatic events than to acknowledge the slow processes by which significance fades. The basilica did not disappear overnight. It was first damaged, then abandoned, then covered. Likewise, spiritual decline is rarely sudden. It occurs through a series of small concessions, each one seemingly insignificant, until the structure of belief is no longer visible. And yet, the rediscovery of the church suggests that loss is not final. Archaeology, in this context, becomes a form of remembrance. It retrieves what has been forgotten and reintroduces it into consciousness. There is a theological parallel here with the concept of anamnesis, the act of remembering that makes present. In the Eucharistic liturgy, believers do not merely recall past events. They participate in a reality that transcends time. Similarly, the uncovering of the basilica is not merely an academic exercise. It is a re-engagement with a living tradition. However, this raises a further question. What is the purpose of such rediscovery? Is it simply to preserve heritage, or does it call for transformation? The danger lies in treating the submerged church as a curiosity, an object of detached interest. To do so would be to miss its deeper significance. The ruins beneath Lake Iznik are not only about the past, they are about the present condition of faith. They invite not only observation, but response. One might argue that the true secret of the submerged church is not hidden beneath water, but within the human capacity to forget and to remember. The lake conceals the basilica, but it also preserves it. In a similar way, history both obscures and safeguards the truth. The challenge is to discern which elements of the past are merely remnants and which are enduring realities that continue to demand engagement. In the final analysis, the submerged Church of Nicaea resists simple interpretation. It is neither a symbol of defeat nor a straightforward testament to endurance. It embodies a tension that lies at the heart of Christian theology: the coexistence of presence and absence, visibility and invisibility, loss and preservation. The sacred is not immune to the processes of history, yet it is not ultimately defined by them. For the modern individual, this tension manifests in subtle but persistent ways. There are aspects of life, values, convictions, relationships, that once seemed central but have gradually receded from view. They are not entirely gone. They remain beneath the surface, shaping thought and behavior in ways that are not immediately apparent. The question is whether one is willing to undertake the work of rediscovery, to look beneath the surface and to recover what has been submerged. The waters of Lake Iznik are calm, almost indifferent to what lies beneath them. Yet beneath that calm surface rests a testimony that refuses to disappear. The church still stands, not as it once did, but as something altered, hidden, silent, yet enduring. It asks a question that cannot be easily dismissed. If the foundations of faith remain intact, what prevents them from rising again into visibility? And perhaps more urgently, what within the human heart has been allowed to sink, not because it lacked strength, but because it was no longer sought? O Lord, whose presence is not bound by stone nor lost beneath the waters, awaken in us the memory of what we have allowed to sink into silence. Where faith has grown dim, kindle again your light. Where truth lies buried beneath distraction and doubt, grant us the courage to seek and to uncover. Teach us that what is built upon you is never truly lost, only hidden. Restore in us a longing for the sacred and lead us beneath the surface of our own hearts, that we may rediscover your enduring presence. Amen.